Well, for more on all this, we can speak to Dalia Fahmy. She is a senior fellow at the Center for Global Policy in Washington, joins us now via Skype from New Jersey. And so we were just seeing the latest post from ex-military contractor Muhammad Ali, whose social media posts have really sparked so much interest. I think they've been viewed by millions of people who are furious about the corruption allegations that he's making. Can I get your thoughts on this latest video?
So I think what we saw last night was unprecedented in that no one anticipated the fear barrier that President Sisi had instituted all over Egypt for the past couple of years to be broken, and to be broken by a simple call of the major sports event that occurs in Egypt, the big soccer game between Al Ahly and Zamalek. After that very national moment, go into the street and fight for your country. And so I think that kind of nationalist call, bringing everyone together, coupled with the fact that it wasn't a violent night. Yes, there were 78 arrests, but there wasn't the all-out kind of police, army vehicles that we've seen in the streets in the past, might embolden people to continue to go into streets tonight and do this million-man gathering or march next Friday, just as he had called for this protest this week. And so what I think we're also seeing is a real interesting demographic shift in the protesters. The average age in Egypt today is 23. The revolution of 2011 was 8 years ago. And so the average age of Egyptians that were during the revolution was 15. And so those protesting in the streets have really lived most of their formidable years of their lives under extreme repression and uncertainty.
And it's very interesting what you say about the way in which the government has cracked down on any sort of dissent. And I want to pick up on that point with you, but also just want to take a look at some of the latest images that are coming to us from Suez, where, of course, this in northeastern Egypt, and we are starting to see a few people on the streets there, perhaps not as great as the sort of numbers that we were seeing last night. And we have to be also cautious about exaggerating the presence of those on the streets. We're not talking about wide-scale protests at all on the scale that we have seen in the past or in 2011. This is not that. But nonetheless, Dalia, it takes a great deal of courage for people to make an appearance like this on the streets, given the threat that this poses to their safety.
We have seen that the generation of 2011, which used to be called Generation Protest, is today called Generation Jail because over 60,000 political prisoners exist in Egypt. We've seen the thousands of disappeared persons, those who have been extrajudicially killed, and those who have rounded up in the streets and been disappeared. So the cost of protest today is very critical. It's very dangerous. And so the fact that even a few have broken the fear barrier is interesting. But I think aside from that, the social, economic, and political situation in Egypt lends itself to creating the perfect counter-protest moment. If you look at, again, the average age of Egyptians is 23 years old. According to Egypt's own statistics, in 2013, 20% lived under poverty. 2019, they claim that 33% of Egyptians live under poverty. And according to the World Bank, it's closer to 60%. So you have a very young population, most of whom live in abject poverty or on the brink of poverty. And there is no real room for growth in given this economic situation. And then the release of these videos that show a president living a very lavish lifestyle could be a moment where Egyptians might turn.
And so so it is possible that we could see more such protests, but I'm interested by something you said about the way in which the government, the military specifically, has responded to protests in the past. We have seen really a zero-tolerance approach with, tear gas and bullets. Now, why hasn't that, as you say, that was largely peaceful, there were arrests, but why hasn't that happened this time?
So, again, the jury is out, but what I will tell you is that In 2011, the military stood by and allowed President Mubarak to be removed from office because he had become a liability to the military. In 2013, President Morsi had to be removed from office because he had become a liability to the military. We could possibly be seeing a moment today where President Sisi is increasingly becoming a liability to the military. We need only look at the last election, the last presidential election. Most of the candidates that attempted to run for office were former military men who were either arrested or were not allowed to run. And if you look at the former chief staff of the military, Anand's Facebook page, which he continues himself to be in prison since he attempted to run for office, and he, a former military man, calls for protesters not to leave the street until Sisi is removed. I think we also might be seeing something happening from within the military or some kind of internal fissure that's saying President Sisi might have become a liability to the military itself.
All right. Thank you for your analysis. Appreciate it. Dalia Fahmy joining us there from New Jersey.